let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome back to Thicc Radio, the podcast where we talk about gaining, feedism, and everything in its orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it. James,
well,
this has been a very interesting evening.
Yeah, listeners, I'm sure you've noticed by now, these review episodes don't tend to go very well because what we have to watch is shit. And I'm not
just putting it lightly.
Yeah. So, I'm sure you can guess where this episode is going. So let's just get into it, shall we? So we watched two short films tonight. The first one was Mukbang, directed by Liliana Saeb in 2015, and the second was Eater, directed by J.L. Carrozza in 2017. Now, what's really interesting, I think, in this is that both of these are short films.
Mm-hmm.
Both of these are done by Latine artists. Mukbang was the only one done in Spanish,
mm-hmm.
but they also came out around the same time and at kind of equivalent lengths. Mukbang was only about 10 minutes long. Eater was about 26, 27. So, a slight bit.
Yeah, 27 minutes too long.
But, I thought that was kind of interesting to comment on because really everything we've seen so far has been, like a documentary perspective review.
Yeah, or something along those lines, yeah.
Or, as with the episode of Madness that we did, like it's character presentation and it's done in these really short, close-knit episode serials that are kind of kept separate from the main plot line.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas these are fully self-contained artistic ideas around feedism and things like that.
Yes.
So I do just want to say, before we get into tearing them a new one, that I think that is worth considering, right? That these pieces actually do show something different. And I do feel like that does affect the rating we'll probably end up giving them in the end. And really, it just shows that, diversity in this instance means that people of all cultures and creeds can shit over feedism. It's not something limited to white people and English speaking. Everyone can do it. Everyone can get on the band.
Everybody can suffer.
Everyone can do it. So, okay. So, as I said, the first one we watched was Mukbang. Now, this short film follows the main character, Carla, who does mukbangs, and she connects with a winner of a contest she's put on named Miguel. The nature of this contest is very specious. Basically, he's the lucky chap who gets to meet with her for like a light dinner or something like that. It seems like they get on. He offers to drive her home, but kidnaps her instead.
Like you do.
Like you do. So, the first question I want to ask, do you feel like what this means is civilians, like in the zeitgeist, believe that, like...
Do I think that regular people who might see this film think, oh, this is what happens when your dude's a feeder or someone's into feeding, like they're out there kidnapping innocent people and putting them in their mother's basements and shackling them to a chair.
Yeah.
I would think that if they actually watched the whole thing, I would hope that they would see that it's not real. That they would think, okay, this is just ridiculous, like this isn't really what happens. But I'm sure that there are small-minded and or just uneducated people who would think, oh, well, this is what's going to happen to all those people who do mukbangs. Eventually, somebody's going to do this to them too, kind of situation. I see it going either way.
It's interesting, right? Because obviously, like, as members of the community, we invest in the community. When we talk about gaining and feedism, we talk among ourselves. We don't talk about it mostly with civilian types. So it's interesting to kind of get this like dip into the cool waters of reality, what people seem to think we do and what we're about. And it does kind of catch me by surprise. Like I knew that there was this negative perception, but I didn't think it involved kidnapping. But hey, that's
Well,
just
I mean, I know that that is a common fantasy in fiction, gainer fiction, uh, big BBW fiction. Like sometimes kidnapping is part of the fantasy. I mean, I'm not saying that that's what people should assume, but like, have I read gainer stories where some jock gets kidnapped by his coach and fattened up to be a wide receiver? Yeah, I've read a story like that before.
oh, sure. And I think we've all indulged and enjoyed those stories, but I think it is very different to see it presented. And, I think the sort of implication of those stories is that the person enjoys it, or like in the terms of brat taming, that even if they don't enjoy it to begin with, they enjoy the idea of being tamed or something like that.
Mhm.
Whereas I feel like this doesn't quite hit the same bullet points in that presentation, so to say.
Yeah.
Um, like I mentioned before, this film is done entirely in Spanish. Like, from what you've seen of like other pieces done in the past by Western audiences, by English speaking audiences, do you feel like there's something maybe a bit different to this piece in that regard?
I mean, I don't know if I'm qualified to speak on it or not because, like, I mean, I don't know if its style is different because it was done by a Spanish speaking director. I haven't really studied that
Hmm.
genre enough to know. I don't think it necessarily has to add any further interpretation on it.
No, that's true. I suppose it's just interesting to think, because so much about gaining content and this kind of harkens back to why we do culture apps in the first place. The majority of our gainer content comes from the West and it comes from English speaking and this majority group. I just find it interesting to actually see the concept of gaining and feedism presented not in English. And it kind of makes me, I don't know, like in watching the film, I have my critiques of it, but it kind of makes me add in an extra layer of being like, oh, this is, potentially a different context or a different space in which this is happening. So, you know,
Possibly.
I don't feel like it added anything in particular that I could note. If any of our listeners happen to be of Latin ethnic background or are Spanish speakers and happen upon this film, it is available on Vimeo. Just search for Mukbang 2015, you'll find it. Um, Please feel free to email us at thiccradio@gmail.com and just let us know if you found any particular references or bits and pieces. It is a 10-minute short film, so there's truly not much time for much, but if you spot anything, let us know. Um, Speaking to the end of the film, the resolution is, he's trying to force her to eat. She throws up and doesn't want to eat more. He gets really angry and he smacks her pretty fucking hard, and it
Yeah.
seems to knock her unconscious. He leans in to check if she's okay. She sits up straight away and bites into his neck,
Yeah.
rips out a piece of flesh, which obviously causes him to slip and stumble. And
She went Mike Tyson on his ass.
he slips on her vomit and falls to the ground and cracks his head, and it's implied that he's now dead. She then pulls a fork out of her leg because that's been there the entire
Oh
time.
yeah, I forgot about that. He stabbed her with a fork when she refused to open her mouth.
Like, and they just left it in there. Fuck me. Um, and then the actual ending scene just shows like a cut, and then it shows her in her kitchen, just cooking meat on the stove. And in the previous scene, because she took a bite out of his neck, she's like sort of slow motion stroking her lips and face and mouth with her fingers. And the implication is she's cannibalized and eaten this dude, right? And she's going to eat him.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I wasn't aware that there was this zeitgeist link between feedism and kidnapping. Is there a zeitgeist link between feedism and cannibalism?
I mean, only in like the realm of vor, I would think, because vor is the fetish of swallowing a person whole. So, I mean, that's the only time that I can think of that it's ever been linked with feedism.
Most for that I've ever come across, and jacked off to, full disclosure, there is no chewing. The person is just consumed whole.
Well, I've read some, well, but I've read macro that involves vor and does actually involve like
The chewing.
bits and pieces.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
How very Attack of Titan of you.
yeah, exactly.
You know. Um, but yeah, that was it for Mukbang. And then the second film was Eater, which
I
was
have a lot more to say about this movie.
yeah. Look, to be honest, folks, as we said, Mukbang was only 10 minutes. Eater was 26. There was a lot more opportunity for a lot more questions, and I'm going to be honest with you, the production value of Eater is a lot lower than Mukbang's. Mukbang was actually like if you take out the offensive context and bullshit, audio was spot on. The minimal use of music was great. Set design, good. And cinematography and lighting was actually really, really quite nice.
Yeah.
If it had been a positive portrayal of feedism, honestly, probably would have jacked off to it. I just get to sit here and be like, ugh, this was just. Anyways, so Eaters. Uh, so it starts off with a male capturing a female, which again, okay, this draws an interesting parallel. Um, kidnapping again,
hmm
kidnapping again, and in both instances, you know, to be clear, chloroformed, knocked out. Um, during the film, the captive becomes obedient owing to the amount of like junk food he's like getting her hooked on. Like there's a moment about a third of the way through where she like strikes back, she's gonna kill him, and he's like, if you kill me, who's gonna buy you Chinese? And she's just kind of like falls to the floor weeping, like, oh god, what would I do with myself without my fucking Chinese? Um, so that happens. I do want to ask, and possibly because you are a little bit more medically knowledgeable than I am,
hmm
like, does that correlate to like people developing food addictions? Like, obviously, obviously, there's always going to be an example where something is proven to be true, right? Like, there will,
Yeah.
of course, be examples of people who are like, yes, this absolutely works for them.
hmm
Exception does not negate the rule. By the rule of how humans typically work, can humans be like controlled by being trained on junk food and then have someone be like, hey, if you run away, you won't get any more McDonald's or some shit?
Well, I think that history has proven that human beings can be conditioned to believe damn near anything, just depending on how they go about doing it. You know, like how else did we wind up with the Nazis? How else did we wind up with cult members that are willing to drink Kool-Aid and kill themselves en masse, or pop the cyanide pills because they think a comet is about to be flying over the planet and take them all to heaven? Like humans can be conditioned to do anything, and I suppose if he had broken her psyche down to the point of, you know, that Stockholm syndrome sort of thing where she now is sympathizing and identifying with her captor and like, oh, now he's providing my protection, like, yeah, it's not unbelievable that that would happen.
Mm.
It's not the most realistic thing that happens, but like it's not impossible.
Yeah, I suppose it ironically makes me reflect on other pieces we've watched, like Fat Girls and Feeders, um, where at the very least the presentation of like non-con feeding is done from a perspective of like seduction.
hmm
Like, you're big and beautiful to me, you know, if you eat a little bit more, you'll be bigger and therefore more beautiful to me. You love to eat, let me bring you all of your favorite treats. Like, there is at the very least an element of like, hey, this could be fun and enjoyable. Whereas in both these instances, these guys were like, let me chloroform you and tie you to a chair and then scream at you and physically assault you if you say no.
And may I say something about the scene in Eaters with the chloroform? Okay, at least in Mukbang, we didn't have to hear the guy go, "Yeah, how's that smell? Do you like the way that tastes?" Like,
Oh
like
yeah.
that. You remember that was literally the dialogue when he's chloroforming that poor girl. He's like, "Yeah, you like the way that smells?" Like,
It
who
was
wrote
really,
this?
really, really weird. And that actually kind of brings me to my next point. Like a lot of a lot of the the dialogue, the sound effects, and like the camera angles. For me, it seems to be more reminiscent of like guerrilla style filming, which like when it gets talked about like cinematically, typically refers to like scene. There are scenes in like Terminator movies where literally what happens is like a truck will pull up with the actors and like the set pieces that they're going to use in the back. They all jump out, record the scenes that they need to on the street, and then everyone gets back in the van and shoots off because you have to get like public clearance to like use a space, right?
Mhm.
And that's what it means to do guerrilla style filming. You're
Yeah.
basically being like, we weren't
It's like
here.
the early, it's like what John Waters used to do.
Yeah. It would basically be like if a lawyer came around and said, this store owner said you were doing distracting things in front of their store. And you could be like, well, there's no paper trail and there's no evidence of this and you can't prove it. So, yeah, like, buried that. But the majority of guerrilla style filming that gets done is actually in pornography. So, based on like those elements of the film, do you feel like the director is trying to imitate gainer porn?
I think so, but I think if I could sum this movie up, so it starts off as a B movie psycho thriller where he kidnaps her. Then it becomes porn because as soon as he gets her into his mother's basement and chains her to this chair and starts feeding her, suddenly the camera angle switches. It's like it's the POV of the spoon going into her mouth. It's the POV of like her chewing. I'm like, oh, this is just porn.
Oh,
That's
and
what
that
this
just
is.
like
I was
that
like,
ASMR, like,
yeah, and the ASMR stuff. I was like, this is just straight up porn. I was beginning to wonder if it was maybe like a tailor-made clip that had gone rogue or something.
oh, girl.
But then it devolves into
Oh,
Clockwork Orange.
oh, and we'll get to the ending, girl. We'll get to the ending because I gotta ask you here. When I tried to look at this film from like, kind of how I said with mukbangs, at the very least, that was like beautiful to look at, if
Mhm.
nothing else. This film had poor lighting, poor sound quality overall. It had a really bad ADR, which wasn't consistent. The music choices were strange. They were also loud or soft at the wrong times. The set design was minimal. Camera operation was poor. Like there would fully be angles of her sat on the couch and like she's not in thirds. She's like halfway out of shot or something like that. And I
Mhm.
think it was because like in a film where you have a crew doing things, you would have the camera moving to follow both actors. But I'm pretty sure that the reason why they had these weird angles was because they needed to include all the movement that he would do in a single
Yeah.
static shot
Yeah.
because there was no one operating the camera. It
Yeah.
was just
No, it was totally a static camera until it switched to handheld because it was probably his phone as he was, spooning the coleslaw into her mouth.
doing all that shit. I mean, and everything else as well. Like the dude was obsessed with anime for some reason. He never once.
Mom, I'm watching my anime.
What? Oh my God! And when
Oh yeah, and then the completely inappropriate dialogue of the kid's mother.
Yeah,
Um
you'll know how there's like a stereotype thing that when people try to describe Asian stuff and they say a CH word. Yeah, she says like that basically. Like, I can't believe you're watching that stuff. Wasting your time, and mama. Like my
not to
that.
although again
Uh,
about the mother and about the mom. Okay, so like that was the worst sound quality because sometimes it was so low I had no idea what she was saying. And then when the POV would change to the stairwell, because of course his room is in the basement, then all of a sudden you could hear what she was saying. And then when it would switch back to the static shot of the two of them, you couldn't hear her anymore. It's like, dude,
pick something.
ugh.
The sound balancing was off. Oh, and oh God, what was I about to say? Sound balancing, script.
You know
Like
what? Maybe this film just went over my head. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe this is meant to be satire and I just didn't get it.
no, I
But
don't think
this
so. I don't think
but
so, girl. Don't give them that credit because
okay, because I'm like maybe I've just because I've been very very harsh on everything we've watched so far. And I
no.
mean, I didn't want to shit all over everything that we watched and like I was hoping there was going to be at least something good besides hard fat. And thus far, I have found nothing. Like my well is completely dry.
Like, like, look, without being too obvious about this, like, I enjoyed mukbangs far more than I enjoyed Eater. One, because it was shorter and I didn't have to go
Mm,
through it as long, but also two, because it was just put together nicely.
yeah,
Like, even Fat Girls and Feeders, Hard Fat, they didn't have the same cinematic quality that mukbangs had.
yeah,
So
that's
if you
true.
want to at least see the visual presentation of fat negativity and fetus negativity, go watch mukbangs. It's 10 minutes long and it's got
Yeah.
cannibalism in it, you know? It's a nice simple romp, basically.
But
This
that's not the only movie that had cannibalism in it.
no, it's not, because as we're going to get to, minds think alike. So honestly, I just feel like this director's skills are really poor. But anyways, you mentioned the whole anime thing before. Like, when I mentioned that the set design was really bad, it's like it was just blank walls in this room, and then
Oh,
like
except did you manage to catch in the first shot when he had her chained to the chair on the wall? There were a bunch of
that girls.
manga illustrations that were
Yeah.
all chubby girls.
But there was about 10 pictures in a weird formation on like a small portion of the
Yeah,
wall.
it was like the right upper corner or something. It
Like it
was
was
like they weren't dispersed at all. They were just like all bunched right there.
it was nothing of note. Oh yeah, and the whole premise of like locked in his mother's basement. She's fully like, "Where have you taken me?" He's like, "Don't worry, we're in my basement at my mom's house." Like, I haven't kidnapped anyone, but listen, just gonna put this out there. I wouldn't be telling people. Where have you taken me? Well, I was this close to giving you the full postal code. Like, no. Come on. Anyways. Um, yeah, so he's got this artwork of like fat anime girls. Like, is there a trope about like anime and fetish that I'm unaware of?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a trope, but I know that especially in the world of fan fiction, anime, TV series and movies, there's usually quite a few stories revolving around one or more characters getting fat. But I feel like any intellectual property gets used for that because I've seen all kinds of weird, unusual stuff for Harry Potter, for anime stuff, for shows that were on the CW and stuff like that. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily just because it's anime.
Hmm. I, I, at this stage, I choose to believe that, considering how poorly the rest of the film was put together, even if you can draw that link, it probably wasn't made intentionally. Just that's my interpretation of it. I also wanted to mention her fake stomach was poorly done.
Oh God, yeah. So as he goes through these montages of feeding her, like it'll cut to the next day. Like he did some kind of like stupid transition where like he just time lapsed the sun rising and setting to denote the passage of days. And then like he kept putting her weight at the bottom of the screen, and like every day that went by, she was supposed to go up by like a couple of kilos per
Which was
day.
several pounds. But then even by the end of it, so the final measurement was day 1186. Basically, because I had to work this out because he didn't bother to put like a total or anything,
Hmm.
which again makes me think elements of this read like fetishy, like it could have been porn.
Yeah.
But if this guy really wanted to go for it, there would have been like a final weigh-in, like a total. Anyways, she gained about 194 pounds. Um,
But I was referring to like I was bringing it up because of that first shot where he actually showed her more in full body and like what the damage was supposed to be. It literally looked like one of those pool noodles that had sort of been like cut up and just like wrapped around her and like, well, not even wrapped around her, but just stuffed up under her really like flowy shirt. That's
yeah,
what it looked like. And then it just got worse from there.
yeah. I was trying to work out and calculate like if the weight gain was reasonable, and realistically, over about 3.25 years, roughly 200 pounds. Like we've seen it done. Members of the community have done that in
Yeah.
shorter times,
Yeah.
so it's doable. Um, But I think just as gradual, it was less realistic because there would be like in the shorter number of days, she gained a lot more weight, and as the days got longer, she gained less weight.
Yeah. There's something else I want to point out about that initial montage too,
Oh,
right? So from the beginning of the feeding session to about where she gained 150 pounds or something like that, or maybe it was just 100 pounds, he finally unchains her. And now, mind you, she's been wearing the exact same clothes the entire time.
oh yeah, she has not taken a bath.
She probably reeked to high heaven. And I mean, and really, if she had been in a sitting position for, I think it was like over 100 days by that point in the film.
Yeah, like
Well,
this.
for one thing, her legs would be completely contracted. She'd never be able to use them again. And two, she'd be swimming in a pile of her own excrement.
Oh, now that now, oh my God. So that was another scene that got brought up several times.
Oh yeah, yeah, the bedpan.
Him sniffing her bedpan and being like, "Ooh, good work, baby." And during like the montage of her eating, there would be a scene of him like pouring what was probably like flat Coke or chocolate milk
Yeah.
from this bedpan into the toilet. But they intersperse this with shots of her eating, and I'm like, baby,
Like,
if
why did we even need to see a shot of the bedpan being emptied into the toilet in the first place? What does that add to the story?
like
Is that a narrative like plot point that I'm missing somehow?
I don't know, girl. Anyone listening who potentially is into the scat fetish, we've kind of mentioned this before. Tim and I very much don't know
It's not
anything
our thing.
about
Like, I'm neither of us judge it.
it.
It's just not our thing.
So, if you feel like you can comment, please feel free to reach out to us at thiccradio@gmail.com and just let us know if those scenes actually mean anything. But it just kind of feels like it's marketed as feedism, or feederism, I should say, because of course I don't even know that it's feedism these days. But like they're saying that feederism is bad, but then they're also conflating feeding with cannibalism and scat and just a whole bunch of other things. It just creates this really weird thing. But anyways, the ending of the film, because I know you're all dying to hear how this ends. In the end, the captive kills her captor by slitting his throat while he's asleep. And as he's like seizuring to death on the floor, she's like beating him to death with a rolling pin. Because of course,
Fat girl has to use a fat girl weapon.
because even though she's sat in a basement with no kitchen or running water for the past 3 and a quarter,
Yeah, where the fuck did the rolling pin come from?
why would you have a rolling pin? Like just to flatten out her Chinese takeaway and fold it up and shove it in. Like, oh, I just don't even know.
Maybe she was using it as a dildo.
Honestly, this movie can go fuck itself with a rolling pin. So. So after this, he's dead. She exits the basement, which, by the way, is filled with like a red light, which is maddening.
Yeah.
There's also in the background of the shot as she exits the basement, one of those wavy arm inflatable tube man things.
When I saw that, I was like, "What the fuck is going on? Like, is it chasing her? Was it alive? Did his spirit possess it after she killed
Oh
him?"
my
Like,
god, it's the seed, it's Chucky. But as a wavy arms inflatable tube man. Oh my
oh
god.
god, the most ineffectual murderer on earth.
Honestly. Um, so she exits the basement. And you remember how we mentioned about this mother and it being like, oh, it escaped to the mother. Like, why would you tell them that you're in mother's place? Turns out the voice that she's been hearing this entire time is like a living AI on a computer that's talking to her.
Mm-hmm.
And basically says, so you figured it out. It's my son and these ugly fat chicks, you ugly piece of
Oh
shit.
no! It said like my son. He's into video games and whores. He loves his whores to be chubby. Well, what are you standing there for, fat girl? Why don't you get out of here?
Oh my god.
Did I make her sound kind of like Betty Davis there for a second?
Yes, yes, you did. Wait, wait. Is this like some weird spiritual successor to whatever happened to Baby Jane, because even though she wasn't in a wheelchair or in a basement,
Oh my God, I didn't even think of that. Maybe we really are being too harsh. Maybe
oh
this
my
was secretly
god,
brilliant.
maybe it was. Because he didn't say the line, but he basically pointed at her and said, "You're never gonna leave here. Ever." Oh my god.
Holy shit.
Oh my god. Okay, okay. Okay, I think I might have to change my score now.
Yeah, I may be
Holy
changing
shit.
mine too.
Holy shit. Okay, okay. Deep breath, James. Deep breath. Sorry, guys. You don't understand. Oh, this is such a wild ride. Okay, so so the Betty Davis machine
Yes.
um tells her to get out, and then she retaliates by like sweeping off the counter and just like stomping.
Yeah, and the whole time it's going like, "What are you doing? Stay away from me.
What are you doing? Leave me alone! Leave me
Leave
alone!
me alone. Don't
Yeah,
touch
I
me.
don't understand. And
I'm
then
calling the cops."
she goes to the bathroom. And I don't know what prompted her to walk down this end of the house, because you could see in one of the other shots, like the front door is like right there.
Yeah, like, well, maybe she had to pee really bad.
And she's like, well, everyone's dead. No one's going to mind if I take
Yeah,
a
might as
shit.
well go have a piss.
But then she goes to the bathroom, and then his actual mother, like in skeleton form, but still had like full wig.
Yeah, that was
Full wig.
very that was very much a nod to Psycho. That was a Norman Bates situation, because like in the original Psycho, when they think that they found Mrs. Bates, because she's facing the wall and it's got like this gray bun that's all tied up in this like house coat and whatnot. And when they swing the chair around, it's a skeleton
Mm.
with the wig on. And then Norman Bates comes out of the shadows dressed like his mother, wielding the butcher knife. So that was totally a nod to Psycho.
So she's dead in the bathtub, but then she's also holding a letter that we don't get to read, but like just at the bottom it says, "I love you, Mum." So I don't know. Maybe he killed her. I guess he must have done, because he had to have planted this AI thing. Um, but then, anyways, she leaves the scene, is like walking around in this horrendous fat suit.
Oh yeah, it was. I don't know what it was constructed from, but if I can be brutally frank about what it looked like, especially around her pelvic area, it looks like what they possibly, because when the wind blew against the dress, you could see all these lumps and bumps and like like cellulite looking bits in it. I was like, it kind of looks like they just bought some big girl panties and shoved a bunch of like cotton balls in there, and like that would suffice.
Yeah, it was weird, girl. And obviously, like it's like slow-mo, weird camera angles, sound lacing over itself. Um, with her on fisheye lens looking spooked, with a lot of people commenting on how fat and disgusting she looked. The next scene, she
Oh, wait, before you move on, did you, during that scene where she's like, doing the montage of walking outside and all that, did you hear the one gay guy make the comment in the background?
wait, the gay guy, what did he
Well,
say?
I mean, I'm assuming he's gay because it was like one of those girl, and it was like I think he said hashtag girl let herself go. You didn't hear that?
No!
Yeah, I heard it.
Oh my god. Holy shit. Okay, so there's also like a scene being laced over itself. Like she's looking at the sky is clear, and then it's lacing over a shot of like a flock of ducks flying in the V formation, which I'm assuming is meant to be like lacing over the idea of freedom versus entrapment versus freedom versus entrapment. But anyways, in the very next scene, she's back in that house. She picks up a chainsaw, she decapitates her dead captor, and then proceeds to cook and eat him. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, cannibalism does round two, and it was just
Yeah.
as well.
It suddenly became The Hills Have Eyes.
I So look, that whole ending was wild. Can you I'm gonna put the expectations here on you. Can you figure out the fucking purpose of that for me?
I don't know. Honestly, okay, so I'm gonna make some presumptions here. I'm going to presume that this filmmaker is a fan of horror movies in general, including some of the classics, like I said, Psycho, nods to things like The Hills Have Eyes, nods to The Evil Dead, nods to A Clockwork Orange. Uh, I don't know, like, because I can't figure out if this is supposed to be a satire, a straight up joke, someone's twisted idea of torture porn, or the spiritual successor to whatever happened to Baby Jane. Because now I'm so undecided on what this film is supposed to be.
Look, I come back to my original sentiment, which is I think, regardless of whatever his intentions are, I don't think they're clever enough because I think the execution was so poor that, like, look, even if you said at the end of the day, oh, yeah, like this was meant to be inspired by whatever happened to Baby Jane and its fetus elements, like, girl, we only got to that point after making the joke that your impression of the AI sounded just a little bit like Betty Davis. So if we only found it by accident, no one was going to find it on purpose, which means you did a shit job. And the film is still shit. So, with this, the Mukbang one, that one is on Vimeo, so the comments are not there. This one had comments, and we took
yeah, oh my god, they were glorious.
we took a
So
little
good.
comment section to find out what the other 70,000 plus viewers of this fucking film thought. What was your favorite comment, Tim?
My personal favorite was, is this what feudalism looks like to the outside world? Because
Yeah.
I both love that comment, and that comment's really sad because yes, that is what people think happens. That is what, like, if you have zero understanding of what the fetish is, that is exactly what you're going to think. And then you've got this movie to back it up, you know. So like it's funny, but it's also really sad.
Yeah, it's I do want to say here, and not to be all like meta about this, but like kind of the whole reason we're reviewing this stuff is because this is what exists in the zeitgeist about us as a community, right? Whether we like it or not, this is what we got. Now, a lot of people love to do this thing where they go, well, people who do films with fat suits and films that are like fat negative, it's not a big deal because everybody knows that that's not the truth. Shut the fuck up, because that is not the premise of film. The reason why Hollywood as a machine has to be held accountable for what they produce is because people fucking do believe what Hollywood tells them.
Yeah.
If Hollywood tells you a fantasy story about a fat man who weighs 600 pounds called The Whale, in which he is a pathetic slob piece of shit, people are going to go, this is what it is like to be 600 pounds. This is what they're like. They deserve to be pitied, not treated like real people. And when a short film, made by a student, made by an untalented director, who can say, goes for 26 minutes and conflates the ideas of kidnapping, cannibalizing, and all sorts of fuckery, people are going to watch that and go, where did that idea come from? Must be reality, because where else would you cook that up?
Yeah.
So, I know in previous episodes we've challenged listeners, if you are looking for a sign from the universe to create gainer content, please, truly, this is it. This is the universe begging you to please create something worth looking at, because this is exhausting. But to rejoin the conversation, my favorite comment was, she didn't take a bath. So I'm glad we weren't the only people who noticed that this bitch was
she was probably foul.
just,
oh my god, over 100 days without bathing. Good god.
I mean, I'm just going to put it out there. I didn't clean my microwave for the first year after I bought it, and I've cleaned it with vinegar, lemon, baking soda, dishwashing detergent several times, and it still has a vague smell about it. This poor creature will never smell clean again.
You think he could have at least rubbed, like, smudged a little, like, stage dirt on her or something to make her look a little soiled, but, like, that was the other thing, is her physical appearance didn't change during that entire time. Like, nothing, like, he didn't even run a little, like, water through her hair to make it look greasy or anything.
Nope, she still had her blonde highlights. She still had the same haircut style.
Oh my god, yeah, I didn't even think about that part. Like, her hair should have been, like, twice as long. Like, there's just this cascade of roots. Like,
Yeah, there was a lot about this film that I just thought, no, just poorly done. Um, so look, what do these short films have in common? We talked about this a little bit at the start. You know, they're both Spanish director or Latin directors.
Hmm.
They're both short films of a similar duration. They both contain themes of kidnapping
And cannibalism
and
and
cannibalism
torture.
and torture, you know? So, yeah, I don't know, girl. I
So
guess,
that's fun.
yeah. What do you think were the director's motivations for producing these films?
I think in both cases it was supposed to be a horror short film. That's really what I think. Both these directors are fans of horror, and I suppose this was their tribute to that genre.
This was their moment.
Yeah, this is what they decided to present to the world of horror.
Yeah. I mean, I
Because I can't think of any other reason.
no, look, I honestly agree. I think realistically, coming back to the zeitgeist, what is believed about feedism and gaining is horror to so many people.
Mhm.
So it doesn't surprise me that people would try to use this as a narrative to make it look insidious. Um, I don't know. I think there are probably going to be other films we'll watch where it's probably done ironically better in that regard. Um, but I think the creators did what they could with the skills they had and the time allotted to them, and they created two films. And then we watched them, and now we're here.
And unfortunately, I can't get that time back from my life.
No. What do we like about these films?
Um, so like you said with Mukbang, I liked the cinematography, the quality of the film, the lighting, the use of the music,
Mm,
um, and I will say that the special effects when she ripped his throat out, pretty good.
mm.
Some very good practical effects there.
Yes, I would agree. Like, certainly, if I had to pick one to watch again, it's going to be Mukbang because it's shorter and, like I said, cinematically, it's way better. There is a shot of him, like, dead on the floor, and it's not a dummy, it's him, the actor, and it shows the wound on his neck where he was bitten, and there is motion where it
Mhm.
appears like blood
Is gushing out of it,
is
yeah.
gushing out of it. So I was like, actually, this is quite well done.
Somebody did their homework. They had somebody on their set that knew how to do that.
Like I said, this is cinematically beautiful. It's just a shame that the content is no good. Um,
I
again,
can't really think of anything that I like about Eater,
no, no.
other than that pissed off monologue from Mombot.
Oh yeah, that was
My son's into video games and whores. I guess he likes his whores chubby.
hashtag go let herself go. I love how our favorite moments of the film are moments that we're probably remembering in our brains entropy heat death as we reflect on the horror that was inflicted on us. Um, what did we dislike about these films? I
Oh
think,
Christ.
um, yeah, look, for Eater, it was everything. And for Mukbang, it's got to be the just the content, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I dislike that both stories had to involve kidnapping, torture, and cannibalism.
Yeah.
Like, really, both films have cannibalism in it? Like, come on. Um, yeah, I just if you know what, if you want to have a good time while you're very drunk or very stoned or otherwise under the influence, Feeder might be something worth watching in that state. Just don't watch it sober.
You mean Eater?
Oh yeah, sorry, Eater or Feeder.
Yeah, whatever. It'll be in the show notes, kids. You can see it for yourselves and make your own decision. Um, what would you change about these films?
I feel like I mean, sorry, Eater. See, I got Feeder on the brain. I think Eater probably could have been funny if it was actually treated like a satire. or like we said, like a Baby Jane-esque kind of thing, and maybe leaned into camp, it would have been like worth watching. But it existed in that weird place where, because there were some scenes like where the time was lapsing and you could see that the changing seasons were happening and different holidays were happening. Like like for Halloween, he's dressed up like a clown, stuffing brownies in her mouth. And then like when he's Santa Claus, he gives her, like when he's Santa Claus, he hands her gifts, and she hands her a gift. She unwraps it and it's just wrapped up takeaway. It was literally a styrofoam box full of takeaway food that had been wrapped up like a present. So like there were opportunities for it to be genuinely funny, and I just don't think this guy was a good enough writer.
Yeah, like what would I have changed? So I've got to agree. I think it's ironic that like after the fact we stumbled into like a satire, irony, potential interpretation, but the film wasn't made good enough for that. So I think if I were to change this film, I would change it to be way more intentional with whatever message it's trying to produce, and then figure out the direction to kind of shunt it towards.
Yeah. Nobody knew what movie they were in. I'll say that for the actors. Nobody knew what movie they were in.
Nobody had a fucking clue. Though I will say, ironically, for Mukbang, I wouldn't change it. Because at the very least, while it is, it's presenting a person who wants to feed in a poor light, I can't get past the cinematics. I think it was done beautifully. I think it was produced very, very well. And, I can't be mad at that. Out of all the films we've watched, and I said this before, Fat Girls and Feeders, Hard Fat, any of those episodes, cinematically, it is the nicest to look at. I suppose I wish I could go back in time and whisper in the writer's ear, like, hey, what if we took the film in this direction instead? Because then it would be a fucking 10 out of 10. Sorry, Hard Fat, move over. You sheriffs in town. But look, that's it, guys. Listen, let's fucking review this shit and finish up. So, Mukbang. I gave it a 4 out of 10 because while it was cinematically beautiful, it still presents Gainy and feedism in a negative light, and I can't give that more than a 4. So there you go.
Yeah, I gave it a 3. Like you've been saying all along, like the cinematography's good, lighting's good, music's good, effects are good. So I think that's worth giving it a 3, but not much more than that.
And then for Eater, I gave that shit a 0.
And I think I'm going to stand by my original rating. I actually disliked this more than I disliked Fat Girls and Feeders, which I gave a -1. So I am now giving this film a -2. It is squarely at the bottom.
Christ.
And I worry that I'm going to watch something even worse than this.
Girl, we've got shit to watch. We've got more to go. And you know what? Once we finally reach the end of this bullshit list, we'll probably do a final recap of the scores and of our like highs and lows, of which I imagine there will be like, what's that scripture in the Bible? Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear bullshit production. Like, that's gonna be us. So thoughts and prayers, people. But listen, those were some things that we saw, and that's it for another episode here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a good review. If you liked this episode, the podcast, or just us in general, share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and BeefyFrat at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and BeefyFrat at ThiccyMouse. You can also look us up on TikTok at Thicc Radio or at our website at www.podpage.com/Thicc Radio. If you want to submit a voice note, you can reach us at anchor.fm/Thicc Radio/message. And if you have any questions or ideas for episodes, you can reach us at thethickradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Anchor app podcast produced by Stan and Thiccy Mouse.
Mixed and mastered by Stan.
Our artwork is provided by Liliana Saeb.
Our theme song is provided by Spotify.